All right. So here we go. All right. So we're going to get out of this extra window here. So we're live, everyone. Shalom. I'm Brother Doug, as always. My mom's on the other side of the room with me here. Sister Sally's with us today, and I believe Brother Dennis should be coming back in soon, back into the Zoom room soon, so he'll be on soon. So we're the Awakened by Yahuwah Assembly, Yahuwah Almighty, Yahushua Messiah. Today we are going to be continuing our Sabbath book by book, chapter by chapter readings. Our goal is to read the whole scriptures in order, in chronological order, within a year or so. So we've already read Genesis 1 to 9. I really recommend you check those previous Genesis studies out to see the context of the expoundings we're going to be talking about today. So first, we're going to be going to Genesis chapter 10. So this is labeled as Noah's descendants. So this is going to be like the table of nations you were probably taught in church. This is what this is going to be dealing with here. So here we go. It says Noah lived 350 years after the flood. I'm reading from the Lexham Septuagint, by the way. And all the days of Noah were 950 years, and he died. These are now the generations of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. The sons were born to them after the flood. The sons of Japheth were Gomer, Magog, Madai, Yavan, Elisha, Tubal, Meshach, and Tiraz. The sons of Gomer were Ashkenaz. If you got a highlighter, I would definitely highlight that. The sons of who? Sons of Gomer, meaning sons of Japheth, were Ashkenaz, Ripha, and Togarmah, and the sons of Yavan, which according to tradition, Yavan would be the father of the Greeks, of the Grecians, were Eliashah, Tarshish, Kittim, and Rodamim. The islands of the nations were marked off from these on their land, each according to their tongue and in their tribes and in their nations. So if that's the case, then technically my mom and I guess would be considered Yavanites. I guess if that's the case, if the Greeks came from Yavan. So that's kind of interesting because if you research, you'll find out that the Italian race is part Greek and all that. So that's why I made that reference. The sons of Ham, verse 6, were Cush, Egypt, Put, and Canaan. The sons of Cush were Sheba, Havilah, Sabta, Ra'ama, Sabteka. The sons of Ra'ama were Sheba and Dedan. Cush fathered Nimrod. He was the first to become a giant on the earth. And when you actually look, we're at Genesis 10, verse 8 right now. The Septuagint just said Nimrod was the first to become a giant on the earth. Notice how it says to become. Okay. It wasn't that he was the first ever Nephilim. It was the first that he became a Nephilim. Okay. Meaning that he did something to himself. Okay. Probably some type of genetic corruption. We can only speculate at this point in the meaning of the Greek and Hebrew word there, to become, what that means. Supposedly the Masoretic implies sexual things, but who knows? The Greek definitely seems like it's more of a genetic corruption in general is what it's talking about. He became a giant in the earth. He was a mighty hunter, and I would honestly, if I were you guys, I would really want to look into the word, the Hebrew and Greek word for before there, because that's a mistranslation. So it should read as he was a mighty hunter, or actually you should say a giant hunter. I don't know why the Lexham here has mighty. He was a giant hunter before Yahuwah. My bad. He was a giant hunter against Yahuwah Elohim. Because of this, they will say, as Yahuwah, my bad, as Nimrod was a giant hunter. And again, I don't know why the Lexham LXX keeps putting mighty there for Gibberim. I don't know why they're doing that. As Nimrod was a giant hunter before Yahuwah. And by the way, if we get to Genesis 14 today, you'll see what my opinion is of Amraphel, Kino Shinar, how that connects to this chapter. But So I believe that Genesis 14 even proves that he was a giant hunter, that he was a hunter of Nephilim, as that chapter talks about. Those kings were, they cut the Rephaim at Ashtaroth and all that. So so Nimrod's a giant hunter against Yahuwah. By the way, the Targums actually, they're only ones that translate this correct. So if you have any version English translation of the Targums, it would not say before, it would say against him or in rebellion. He rebelled against Yahuwah. So, which, by the way, Nimrod, the Hebrew word Nimrod actually means rebel. It's not a name, just FYI. So he was not before Yahuwah at this point. If he ever did serve Yahuwah, it was before this point. So anyway, so it says, and the beginning of his kingdom became Babylon and Erech and Akkad and Chaldea in the land of Shinar. Okay, so again, so the beginning of his kingdom is in three places. You have Erech, Akkad, Chaldea in the land of Shinar. From that land, he went out to Assyria and built Nineveh and the city of Rehoboth and Calais and Rezen between Nineveh and Calais. This is the great city. And Egypt fathered the Lydians and the Nephthalim and the Anamim. Man, that's a hard one to pronounce. Lahabim, Pathrusim, Kazluhim, from whom the Philistines came, and the Cretans. So Cretans would actually also be Greeks, by the way. So Crete is in Greece. Just FYI, why Paul calls these Greek Gentiles in the New Testament, mind you, he calls them Cretans, right? So he's talking about the Cretans. So that's why he calls them Cretans. It's not like a diss. They're from Crete.
It's gotten a connotation.
Yeah.
In our
bastardized modern English, they consider that a diss, but
you'll hear it in movies.
Also known as liars.
Yeah, like Cretans are supposed to be liars. Like he's basically saying Grecians are liars, is what Paul, what Dennis brought up, is what Paul's actually saying. He's saying these inhabitants of Crete are known as liars or deceivers. So it kind of makes sense when you see who founded Crete and all that, supposedly. According to what we're reading here, it says he went out Nineveh. He went from Nineveh, from Rehoboth and Calah, and he went actually out to, let's see, I think we got to Assyria. Yeah, so he went out to Assyria and built Nineveh. Many people think that that's talking about the person Ashur. I respectfully disagree. The Ashur from the Table of Nations, you don't see him after he's mentioned in his genealogy. This guy Ashur or the person called Assyria is never mentioned again. You know, my theory would be that, yeah, he originally founded Assyria, but Nimrod defeated him and kind of like usurped his the personification of Ashur. So later on in scripture, where you see Ashur the Assyrian, it's actually referring to Nimrod. So it seems like he might have took the guy's identity, which is kind of not outside of Nimrod's character to do that. We see throughout history the beast counterfeits the true Messiah, so would not be surprised. But in this context, it's talking about Nimrod leaving Shinar, and actually he went out to Assyria, probably, referring that he would have reigned in Assyria at some point, and he built Nineveh. Okay, so Egypt. So then it talks about Mitzrayim fathered the Lydians, Nephthalim. So remember, verse 13 is talking about Mitzrayim as the father of the land of Mitzrayim. So that's why in your Septuagint it says Egypt fathered the Lydians, and Nephthalim and Ainim, Lechabim, Pathrusim, Kazluhim, from whom the Philistines came, and the Cretans. So what's interesting is that the Cretans came from Egypt. So technically, like, this is why Paul says genealogies are like, they're endless, because somehow the Egyptians and the Greeks are related. because they're from the same tree. They're both from the person Mitzrayim. So interesting. Canaan fathered Sidon, his firstborn, which I find it interesting. So Sidon or Tyre is from Canaan. And the Hittite, Jebusite, Amorite, and Girgashite, and the Hivite and Archite and Sinite and Arvadite and Zemarite and the Hamathite, after the tribes of the Canaanites were scattered around, and the boundaries of the Canaanites were from Tyre unto one comes to Gerar or Gaza, unto one comes to Sodom and Gomorrah. Interesting. So now this makes a lot of sense with Genesis 14, what we're going to read later on. Okay, so you have the Canaanites spreading out to Sodom and Gomorrah. Hence why there's giants out there. Makes perfect sense. Adamai Zobim, as far as Daza, there are the sons of Ham in the tribes according to their towns in their territories and in their names. And to Shem were born children, even to him the father of all the sons of Eber, the brother of Yaphteh the Great. The sons of Shem were Elam, Assyria, and Parksad, and Lud, and Aram. And the sons of Aram were Uz, Hul, Gether, Meshech, and Arpaxad fathered Canaan. Canaan fathered Shelah. Shelah fathered Eber. And Eber was brought forth 2 sons. The name of the first one was Peleg, because in his days the earth was divided. And the name of his brother was Yoktan. Yoktan brought forth Almudad, Shelef, Hazarmeth, Yerah, Hadaram, Uzal, and Dikla, and Abimael, and Sheba, and Ophir, and Havilah, and Yobab. All these are the sons of Yoktan, and their dwelling was from Massa until the coming to Ophir, the mountain of the east. These are the sons of Shem in their tribes, according to their towns, in their territories, and in their nations. These are the tribes of the sons of Noah, according to their generations, according to their nations. From these, the islands of the Gentiles were scattered about on the earth after the flood. Now, this is where it gets confusing in Genesis 10, because people will say, well, all of them are called Gentiles at this point. Yes, because you don't have at this point the nation of Israel established yet. So what we have to understand is chronologically, right? Yahuwah is not making distinction between Israel and the Gentiles yet. Okay, so this is all the sons of Noah at this point. So you're not going to see the phrase goyim being used as a ethnic connotation yet. What it's saying is, it's saying goyim or a Greek, whatever the Greek word is for nations in a general sense, all the nations. So you're not going to see, mind you, this is pre-Tower of Babel. This is yeah. you're not going to see the distinction between Israel and the other 71 nations until the Tower of Babel happens, which is the next chapter. So this is pretty much self-explanatory, this chapter. We just did Genesis chapter 10. I really recommend looking at the Septuagint for certain things, especially where I just wanted to explain before we move on to chapter 11. In the Hebrew, it is the same word for giant. So what happens is these stupid translators, especially it started with the King James and prior English translators, they took the Hebrew word Gibborim and eisegetically, you can say, put their own interpretation of that word, and they would always translate it as mighty man. That's why they don't see that it's actually talking about Nimrod defiling himself. He was the first to defile himself to become a giant. Because what they do is they translate it as mighty man or mighty hunter. Okay. And the problem is that many times Gibborim is not referring to humans. It's not always referring to a mighty warrior. And that's the big pet peeve I have with these translators. The Septuagint understood this. The Septuagint sometimes would outright just translate it into giant, because they knew that certain times Gibborim is not referring to a mortal man. So that's the pet peeve I have with these English translators, when they realize, even in the Strong's Concordance, it will tell you that Gibborim is not always a mighty warrior. it sometimes refers to a literal giant or Nephilim. So anyway, but moving on. So Tower of Babel, chapter 11. And all the earth was one language, and there was one voice for all. And this happened when they moved from the east, when they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they settled there. And a human said to their neighbor, come on, let's make bricks and bake them in the fire. Notice how they're calling them their neighbor. So think about it. They're all brothers at this point, ethnically, right? Okay. They're all coming from one lineage, Noah. Okay. Let's make bricks and bake them in the fire. And the brick turned into stone for them, and the clay was asphalt for them. And they said, come on, let's build for ourselves a city and a tower whose head will be as far as the heavens. And we will make a name for ourselves before we are scattered over the face of all the earth. And Yahuwah came down to see the city and the tower which the sons of humankind built. And Yahuwah said, look, there is one race and one language of all, and they have begun to do this. Now they will not fail at all that they try to do. Come on, let's go down there to confound their tongue, so that each of them will not understand their neighbor's voice. And Yahuwah scattered them from the place over the face of all the earth. And they stopped building the city and the tower. Because of this, they called its name Confusion, or in the Hebrew, Babel. Okay, because Yahuwah confounded the language of all. Now, what's interesting to note is, if I'm not mistaken, others have found that the word Babel, in its etymology, the root word of it can go back to gate of all, or gate of Elohim. So it's interesting that when you look at it, it can also mean gateway to Elohim. So there seems to be some credence to that. It could have been, it's not really about height. The Tower of Babel is not like this leaning Tower of Pisa that we've been taught to think that it's just a really, really tall structure that somehow physically reaches into heaven. The problem is that if that's the case, then if it's just a tall structure that reaches to the clouds, Yahuwah would not really be concerned, because if they're just reaching to the clouds, what's the danger there? But Yahuwah in context is preventing them from getting into the highest heaven. That's the context. Think about it. So how would a tall tower reach into the third heaven?
Right.
There's no physical way that's possible, literally. But if they have a Stargate, an interdimensional portal that can create a gateway into the heavenly realm, then you have a problem. Just saying. And you see this in ancient history. The ziggurats of the Sumerians, all these cultures had these like pyramid-like structures that they had some ancient type of technology, supposedly even pre-flood, to do these things, to open up, to break down the veil between heaven and earth, which Yahuwah tells us, he clearly shows it in scripture. He puts it there for a reason. But these heathen-like people, and you see even the first wicked nation after the flood, they want to break the veil. And of course, there's tons of Judean Hebrew traditions why they wanted to do that. It seems like they wanted to defeat Yahuwah in heaven, so on and so forth. But the point is that I seriously doubt it was about height. The tallest structure on earth cannot physically reach into the third heaven. It's impossible. So if their goal is to get into the third heaven, they're not going to build a skyscraper, because that would only reach to the clouds, if you see what I'm saying. It doesn't make any sense. Mm-hmm. So it has to be a ziggurat. It's probably more or less it was a ziggurat. Many archaeologists have figured that out, that we have the wrong idea of what the Tower of Babel was. Okay. So let's see here. So they confused their language of all the earth, and from there, Yahuwah Elohim scattered them over the face of all the earth. Okay, so again, it says Yahuwah Elohim scattered them over the face of all the earth. And these are the generations of Shem. Shem was 100 years old when he fathered Arphaxad during the second year after the flood, and Shem lived 500 years after he fathered Arphaxad, and he fathered sons and daughters, and he died. Arphaxad lived 137 years after he fathered Canaan. And again, just to mention, I think we mentioned this last night, but in Genesis 10:26, in the previous chapter, you'll notice the genealogy of Canaan is not mentioned in the Masoretic text. The actual father of Selah is not mentioned in Genesis 10:26. So I just wanted to mention that. He's reiterated here in Genesis 11, verse 12. Arphaxad lived 137 years and fathered Canaan. And Arphaxad lived after fathered Canaan for 430 years, and he fathered sons and daughters, and he died. And Canaan lived 130 years, and he fathered Selah. And Canaan lived after he fathered Selah for 330 years, and he fathered sons and daughters, and he died. Okay, so Selah lived 137 years and fathered Eber, and Selah lived after he fathered Eber for 330 years and fathered sons and daughters, and he died. And Eber lived 134 years and fathered Peleg. And Eber lived after he fathered Peleg for 337 years, and he fathered sons and daughters, and he died. And Peleg lived 137 years and fathered Reu, and Peleg lived after he fathered Reu 209 years, and he fathered sons and daughters, and he died. Reu lived 132 years and fathered Serug. Reu lived after he fathered Serug for 207 years, and he fathered sons and daughters, and he died. And Serug lived 130 years and fathered Nahor. And Serug lived after he fathered Nahor 200 years, and he fathered sons and daughters, and he died. Okay, so now we have in the next verse here, and Nahor lived 79 years and fathered Terah. Okay, and Nahor lived after he fathered Terah 129 years, and he fathered sons and daughters, and he died. And Terah lived 70 years, and he fathered Abraham and Nahor and Haran. Now, these are the generations of Terah. Terah fathered Abram, Nahor and Haran. Haran fathered Lot, and Haran died in the presence of Terah, his father, in the land which he originated in the territory of the Chaldeans. And Abram and Nahor took wives for themselves. The name of Abram's wife was Sarai. The name of Nahor's wife was Milcah, daughter of Haran, the father of Milcah, and the father of Eshcol. And Sarai was barren, and she was not able to bear children. And Terah took Abram, his son, and Lot, son of Haran, his grandson, and Sarai, Abram's wife, his daughter-in-law, and he led them out of the territory of the Chaldeans to go into the land of Canaan, and they came to Haran, and he settled there. And the days of Terah in Haran were 205 years, and Terah died in Haran. Okay, so, and now that was pretty much the end of Genesis 11. I don't think there's much else to really mention. What I did want to kind of take a look at before we go to 12 already, since we went through chapter 10 and 11 relatively quickly, I do want to look at some of the differences here. Just as a reiterating, I know some people were not able to be on the study last night, so they might have missed this. But sometimes the Masoretic text will just have Yahuwah when the Septuagint has Yahuwah Elohim. So I do want to look at that real quick in Genesis 10 and 11. I know in 11 I saw it a couple times, which, by the way, if you look at the Targum Pseudo Jonathan, just thought I would FYI tell you guys, in the Targum Pseudo Jonathan, where is it? So in the Targum Pseudo Jonathan, in I believe it's verse, I think it's verse 6, it would actually say the word of Yahuwah said. So I just wanted to mention that in the Targum Pseudo Jonathan. So just thought that was interesting. Let me just see if there's an actual instance where it's Yahuwah Elohim instead of Yahuwah. Not in this chapter, I don't think so. All right, so let me go to, let's go to chapter 10. Yeah, here we go. So when it gets to Nimrod, in the previous chapter we looked at in verse 9 of chapter 10, it says he was a giant hunter against Yahuwah Elohim. So the Masoretic would have said just Yahuwah. Genesis 10 verse 9 says Yahuwah Elohim. So again, that's showing that Yahusha is the one that he is rebelling against, which is kind of interesting. So there are times. So Genesis 10:9 is only one so far. So we're going to move on to chapter 12 in Genesis. So we're about to read chapter 12 in Genesis right now. And let me just close the participant part here. All right, so I'm going to be reading chapter 12 of Genesis from my Lexham Septuagint here. Okay, here we go. Chapter 12, the call of Abram. So this is Yahuwah calling him out of Babylon. You can parallel this to Revelations 18, how he tells us as a whole to come out. The call of Abram. And Yahuwah said to Abram, go out from your land and from your kinsfolk. They're trying to modernize it. Basically, go out from your family and from your house of your father into whatever land I will show you. And I will make you into a great nation. I will barak you, and I will make your name great, and you will be baruched, and I will baruch those who baruch you, and I will curse those who will curse you. Or is those who curse you, I will curse. And in you, all the tribes of the earth will be baruched. Okay. So again, we see here. By the way, I didn't want to expound this quickly after that, but I just want to say, no way, shape, or form is this promise of Yahuwah's to a religion. I want to make that very clear. It says to Abram. Okay, so this is not every physical descendant of Abraham. Okay, so I know some people misinterpret it as that it is not talking about the state of Israel. Okay, so I see that too much with Christian circles that are pro-Zionist. Okay, first of all, it's talking about Abraham the person, saying those that curse him directly will be cursed. Okay, so anyway, moving on. Okay, the tribes of the earth will be baruched, and Abram went just as Yahuwah told him, and Lot with him. Abram was now 75 years old when he left Haran. Okay, and Abram took Sarai, his wife, and Lot, the son of his brother, and all their possessions that they acquired, and every individual that they acquired out of Haran. And they went out to go to the land of Canaan, and they came to the land of Canaan. Okay, so now they're going to the land of Canaan here. Okay. And Abram traveled through its length to the place at Shechem at the high oak. But the Canaanites at that time were residing in the land. And Yahuwah appeared to Abram and said to him, I will give this land to your seed. And Abraham built an altar there to Yahuwah, who appeared to him And he turned away from there to the mountain toward the east of Bethel and set up his tent there in Bethel towards the sea. Interesting. So he went to Bethel, which is actually where first Yahuwah appeared to Jacob. So Bethel has a very historic significance. It's actually translated, I think, if I'm not mistaken, means house of Elohim, if I'm not mistaken. So like we could say it's a foreshadowing to the tabernacle and the temple. Okay. So toward the sea, and Ai toward the east, and built there an altar to Yahuwah, invoked the name of Yahuwah. And Abram departed as he traveled, he encamped in the wilderness. So this is something we're not taught either, is that the patriarchs did know his name. It says it right there. He called on Yahuwah's name. So you see sometimes, especially even with movies, oh, the God with no name. No, listen, they knew his name, okay? He didn't give his name the first time in Exodus 6. I'm sorry. People that translate it that way, you're contradicting scripture if you translate it that way. First of all, multiple times in Genesis, multiple patriarchs called on the literal name of Yahuwah. We see here Abram just did, Jacob did as well, Isaac did as well. So this is the problem with what I call eisegesis, or putting your own interpretation into the text, because Exodus 6:3, if you just look, you got to understand too, Hebrew works from, what is it, left to right, or what is that? Right to left. Okay. So Yahuwah is posing Exodus 6:3 as a question, not a statement. He's saying, didn't they know my name? Which obviously they knew his name, as we look at Genesis 12 here. Abraham knew his name. He called upon his name. Okay. So that's my pet peeve with the Jewish and Christian tradition. Oh, they didn't know his name until it was revealed to Moses. No, that's a false rabbinical and Christian tradition. Okay. Anyway, so verse 10, and a famine came over the earth, and Abram went down into Egypt to dwell beside there, but because the famine over the earth was strong, it happened when Abram came near to enter into Egypt, Abram said to Sarai, his wife, I know that you are a beautiful woman, so this will happen when the Egyptians will see you. They will say, this is his wife, and they will kill me, but they will keep you. Say then, I am his sister, that it will be with me because of you, and my soul will live on your account. It happened when Abram entered into Egypt, once the Egyptians saw his wife, that she was very beautiful, that rulers of Pharaoh, or I shouldn't say rulers of Pharaoh, probably should say his servants, because usually the Pharaoh's the head guy, so that wouldn't make much sense. So maybe it's supposed to say the leaders, Pharaoh's princes maybe, saw her and praised her to Pharaoh, and they led her to Pharaoh, and they treated Abram well because of her. And he had sheep and calves and donkeys, servants and maids, mules and camels. And Elohim afflicted Pharaoh and his house with great and grievous trials because of Sarai, Abram's wife. Pharaoh, having summoned Abram, said, what is this you have done to me, that you did not tell me that she is your wife? Why did you say she is my sister? So that I took her as a wife for myself. And now look, your wife is before you. Take her and depart. And Pharaoh commanded men regarding Abram that they should accompany him and his wife and all that was his, and Lot with him. So we see a righteous Pharaoh here, kind of like a foreshadowing, or actually, no, this would be after Joseph's Pharaoh. So no, my bad. This is before. Yeah. Before. So you actually have a couple of pharaohs before the wicked one of the Exodus. So something must have happened. That's why I definitely believe Chuck Missler's onto something about the pharaoh of the Exodus being a Syrian pharaoh and not really Egyptian by blood. So I don't know, that I kind of agree with his theory there. See here, because the Greek word for another in Exodus 1:8 is like hetero, like heterosexual. So another kind. So anyway, so we're going to look at Genesis 13. I don't think there's anything to bring up, and I don't think there's any real differences in 13 that I remember when testing the two versions. So I think we're going to move on to 13. So this is when Abraham and Lot get separated. Is Genesis 13 here? Okay, so it says, Abram and Lot separated. Abram went up from Egypt, he and his wife and all his things, and Lot with him into the wilderness. Abram was very rich in livestock and in silver and gold, and he went from where he had come into the wilderness to Bethel, as far as this place where his tent had been before, between Bethel and Ai, to the place of the altar where he pitched his tent. And there Abram invoked or called upon the name of Yahuwah, and the sheep and the oxen and the livestock belonged to Lot, who came along with Abram. And the land did not have room for them to live together, because their possessions were not, or I really don't like how he translates this here. It says, it should say that their possessions did not have room for them to live together, because their possessions were abundant, so they were not able to live together. And a fight took place between the herdsmen of Abram's livestock and the herdsmen of Lot's livestock. Now the Canaanites and the Perizzites were residing in the land. Okay. At that time, Abram said to Lot, let there be no contention between me and you, between your herdsmen and my herdsmen, because we are brothers. Or look at the whole land before you, part company with me. If you go to the left, I will go to the right. If you go to the right, I will go to the left. And when Lot raised his eyes, he saw all the country round about. The Jordan that all was watered before Elohim through Sodom and Gomorrah, like the Garden of Elohim, like the land of Egypt, up to Zoar. And Lot chose all the country round about the Jordan for himself. And Lot departed from the east, and they each parted ways from their brother. Abram settled in the land of Canaan, but Lot settled in the city of the surrounding region and pitched their tent in Sodom. The people who were in Sodom were very evil and sinful before Elohim. Elohim said to Abram after Lot parted ways with him, look up with your eyes and look from the place where you are now to the north, south, east, and the sea, because I will give you and your offspring all the land that you see forever. And I will make your offspring like the sand of the earth. If anyone can count the sand of the earth, then your offspring also will be counted. Get up and travel through the length and breadth of the land, because I will give it to you and your offspring forever. And after decamping, Abram went and settled beside the oak of Mamre, which was in Hebron. And he built an altar for Yahuwah there. So just kind of looking, in my opinion, looking at all the territories he's telling them to look at, what we call the land of Israel today, I would say that's like a piece of what Yahuwah gave him in total. I don't believe that's the only land he gave them. It seems like the land of Yasharal, Israel, was a lot bigger back then. So what we geographically call the land of Israel today was probably only a piece of all the inheritance Yahuwah gave Abraham's seed. So anyway, let's see here. So Genesis 14 here, okay? Abraham rescues Lot. And it happened in the reign, I find it interesting, it says in the reign of Amraphel, king of Shinar, Arioch, king of Eleazar, Charlemar, king of Elam, and Tidal, king of nations, made war with Bilhah, the king of Sodom, with Beersheba, the king of Gomorrah, and king of Gomorrah, and Shinar, king of Admah, and Semebir, king of Zoibim, and with the king of Bela, this is Zuar. All these conspired at the salt chasm. This is the Sea of Salt. For 12 years they served Chedorlaomer, but in the 13th year they revolted. So the ones that are with God, Sodom and Gomorrah, those other kings rebelled from Chedorlaomer and Amraphel and Arioch, and Title. So you have 4 versus 3 basically. That's what's going on here. In the 14th year, Chedorlaomer and the kings who were with him came and massacred the giants who were in Ashtaroth Karnaim. Interesting. We just read about someone, 4 chapters earlier, that's a hunter of giants? Wonder who Amraphel could be. Interesting. And strong nations gather with them, and the Emim who were in the city of Shaveh, and the Horites who were in the mountains of Seir as far as the terebinth of Paran, which is in the wilderness. And when they returned, they came to the fountain of judgment, and this is Kadesh, and massacred all the rulers of Amalek and the Amorites who were dwelling in Hazazon, Tamar, the king of Sodom, and the king of Gomorrah, and the king of Admah, and the king of Zoibim, and the king of Bela. This is Zoar, came out, and they arrayed in their armies against them for battle in the Salt Valley against Chedorlaomer, the king of Elam, Title, the king of nations, and Amraphel, king of Shinar, and Arioch, king of Eleazar. These 4 kings against the 5. Oh, my bad. 4 against 5, not 3. My bad. Now the Salt Valley and the pits of Tar had the pits of Tar. The king of Sodom and the king of Gomorrah fled and fell in there. Those who were left behind fled into the mountain. They took every horse that belonged to Sodom and Gomorrah and all their provisions and went away. They took also Lot, the son of the brother Abraham, and his household stuff, and they left where he was living in Sodom. Yeah, that's where they screwed up. Abraham wasn't even worried about this quarrel that these 4 kings against the 5, but then they took Abram's brother-in-law, or no, his brother, nephew, really? Okay. Oh, I see what it's saying, the son of the brother of Abram. Okay. Yeah, so they took Abraham's nephew. They kind of screwed up there. And one of those who had been delivered approached and reported to Abram, the migrant, or the one who is crossed over. So that's actually, by the way, the reason the Septuagint says migrant or crossed over. That's what Abri or Hebrew means, to cross over, the crossed over one. So now the Amorite himself dwelt at the rock of Mamre, the brother of Eshcol, of the brother of Onan, who were allies of Abram. Abram, upon hearing that his brother Lot was taken prisoner, counted his own household members 318. So it's interesting. You have 318 servants he took as soldiers with him, 318 servants. And he pursued them as far as Dan, and he fell upon them at night, he and his servants, and he struck them and chased them to Hobah, which is on the left to Damascus. And he brought back every horse of Sodom, and he brought back Lot, his brother, and his possessions and women and the people. The king of Sodom came out into Shaveh Valley. This was the plain of the kings to meet him after he returned from the slaughter of Chedorlaomer and the kings who were with him. And Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought out bread and wine. Now he was the priest of the highest, or the most high Elohim. He baruched Abram and said, Baruched be Elohim, Baruched be Abram by the highest Elohim who created heavens and earth. And Baruched be the highest Elohim who delivered your enemies into your hand. And he gave him a tenth of everything. The king of Sodom said to Abram, give me the men, but take the horse for yourself. But Abram said to the king of Sodom, I will stretch out my hand to the highest Elohim who created the heavens and the earth. If I take from a string to a sandal thong from all your things, in order that you may not say, I made Abraham wealthy, except for what the young men ate and the portion of young men who came along with me. Eshkol, Unan, Mamre, these will take a portion. So that's the end of 14 here. I do want to make a mention of my personal opinion, who this Melchizedek guy is, and I think you would agree with what Paul says in Hebrews 7. So I want to go into that. I know there's like three main opinions. Is the most Jewish people out there would say Shem is Melchizedek, mainly based on rabbinical Talmudic literature, which in my opinion is not a source of truth, in my opinion. So I'm going to disregard the Shem opinion. Since I think a chapter or so ago, Sister Sadia, basically the Egyptian Pharaoh is saying, why didn't you tell me she's your wife? Basically he's trying to say that he would have almost laid with her if it wasn't for Yahuwah. Yahuwah stopped him from laying with her. And that's why Yahuwah says, I have stopped you from sinning in this matter. Because Pharaoh was pissed off. He was like, he even said to Yahuwah, like, what's going on here? You had me, you almost allowed me to take someone else's wife. So the Egyptian Pharaoh is like a very righteous guy. He was a little worried, more than a little worried, little concerned that he almost took another guy's wife for his wife. Because Abram did like what you would call a gray lie or a white lie. And even though she is his sister, technically, even though she is his sister, he should have been completely honest with that Pharaoh, because that Pharaoh could have had sex with someone else's wife and would have took her as his own wife unknowingly. So actually, the Pharaoh was almost committed adultery if Yahuwah did not intervene. So Yahuwah stopped him, basically. So yeah, he didn't actually lay with her. He was about to lay with her, because Abram told him, oh, no, I'm not married to her. That's not my wife. That's my sister. So that's what caused all that confusion. So he did what's called a white lie. He lied about her being his wife, but he didn't lie about her being his sister. So right. Basically is what he did. Yeah. So that's the confusion there. Okay, so backtracking here. Let's see here. Genesis 13, there's something really to talk about. 14, again, I want to go back to the Melchizedek thing. I think that's the most important thing to touch on right now. And I want to show you guys what Paul has to say himself in Hebrews 7. So I want to show you, this is not my words, this is Paul's words, okay? And like I said, if you do the research for yourself, you'll see that the view of Shem has no textual basis other than the Talmud. So here we go. Hebrews chapter 7. For this Melchizedek, king of Salem, priest of the Most High Elohim, who met Abraham. So again, I know people, the third opinion is that he was a type of Messiah. If you look at the language Paul uses in Hebrews 7, he's not saying it's a type of Yahusha. He's not, first of all, there would be no point then to say he's the one who met Abraham. Okay, who he's referring to right here in this chapter as Melchizedek, he's likening to the same Melchizedek in Genesis 14. Okay, so we have to throw out that interpretation that he's just a type of Messiah. Okay, for this Melchizedek, king of Salem, the priest of the Most High Elohim, who met Abraham, returning from the slaughter of the kings, and baruched him, to whom also Abraham gave a tenth part of all, first being by interpretation, king of righteousness, And after that, also king of Salem, which is king of peace, Jerusalem. Okay. And we know that Yahusha is going to be the king of Jerusalem. Okay. Without father and mother, bingo, that highlight that verse. Without dad or mom. What other person in human history has no biological father or mother from their beginning? Not the body he took on, but as his origin, right. Yahusha in heaven has no father or mother. Okay. Without descent, meaning without genealogy, having neither beginning of days, Alpha and Omega, nor end, Alpha and Omega, but made like unto the Son of Yahuwah, abiding a priest continually. And some translations, I don't like how it says made like unto the Son of Yahuwah. So people would say, oh, see, that's a type of Messiah. But they're ignoring the whole first part of that verse in Hebrews 7:3. It says, without beginning of days. Key phrase there. That means no genealogy. Key phrase, without father and mother. Okay, you can't ignore that. It's literally talking about Yahusha. So it's very, very simple there. So again, that's fine if people want to believe in one of the other interpretations, but I'm just letting you know the Shem thing has no textual basis. It's only from Mishnaic rabbinical literature, and you can look this up for yourself. The whole point of it was to refute the Messianic Nazarene movement of the first century. That's the whole point of making Shem Melchizedek, king of Salem. And then the other interpretation that people take, like I say, is a type of Messiah. What you would have to do is use eisegesis to get that interpretation. You would have to take one little phrase out of the whole verse, like unto the Son of Yahuwah, and put your own interpretation to the text. See what I'm saying? So to me, it's very clear Yahusha's Melchizedek. He's even the original Melchizedek in Genesis 14, which, by the way, Yahusha himself says Abraham met him. So obviously, if he met Abraham, that's kind of hinting that he could even be hinting that he's Melchizedek. And the Pharisees and Sadducees just went right over their head. But he, in John 8, I think it's 8, was it 8:48, Mom? In the book of John, if I'm not mistaken, John 8:48. So you can cross this with John 8:48. Now, again, you could make the argument that's talking about when he met Abraham in Genesis 18. You could make that argument. I get it. That that's the first time he met him, but I seriously doubt it. Let me see, John 8. Or maybe it's 58. Yeah. So let's start off in John 8. Let's see here. I'll start off in verse 55 of John 8 here. So it says, yet you have not known him, referring to the Father, that the Yahudim of this time thought they knew the Father, thought they were acquainted with the Father. They really didn't know him. And if I should say, I know him not, I shall be a liar like you. But I know him and keep his words. Your father Abraham rejoiced to see my day, and he saw it and was glad. Then the Yahudim, or Judeans, said to him, you are not yet 50 years old. How did you see Abraham? Yahusha said unto them, verily, verily, I say to you, before Abraham was, I am. Then they took up stones to cast at him, but Yahusha hid himself and went out to the temple, going through the midst of them, and so passed by. So the only two options we really have of when he first met Yahusha would be Genesis 18 or Genesis 14, really. So depending on your interpretation, you could say that he met him at the Oak of Mamre in Genesis 18, and I get that. I personally believe he met him in Genesis 14. That's just my conjecture opinion. The first time he actually met Yahusha as I am, as Melchizedek, king of Salem. So That's my opinion. And technically, you can look into this. Other people have done studies into the Hebrew of Melchizedek, and that it's actually referring to the actual priest of a specific mighty one. So it could even be interpreted as king of Yahuwah's righteousness. Okay. So, which again, if we see in prophecy, right, in Isaiah, it says what is one of his names, allegoric names that Yahusha's given as the stem of Jesse? Yahuwah, our righteousness, right? Mm-hmm. Just saying. Okay. So anyway, and yeah.
What I'm thinking is, I believe that figure was Yahusha also. For something else, it might seem like speculation, but I'm thinking, as we walk through the whole Old Testament, and you see all the what you want to call greats, okay, all the people that were a very definite servant. They were all at one point or another, brought into fellowship or physically in there with either the word of Yahuwah, the angel of Yahuwah, all of them. I've been just reading a lot through the Old Testament. Elijah, in the Judges we saw it. It's like all the people that had a real function throughout the Tanakh, they all encountered him. And Abraham, you're going to say Abraham didn't encounter him? No, he encountered him.
No, he did. There's no argument of that.
Okay.
From believers right now, there's no argument of that.
Okay.
The argument would be when he encountered him.
Sorry for my little.
No, it's okay. No, it's okay. You probably misunderstood what I was saying. So, Mom, the in question is when he first met him. That's the question.
Okay.
Genesis 18 or Genesis 14? Because
right.
most people will say where it says Yahuwah came to Abraham with there's three men that came to Abraham in Genesis 18. And if you look in the first verse of Genesis 18, it says Yahuwah came to Abraham. So especially those of us that believe in the oneness would say that that's what John 8:58 is referring to, that he met him then. I would disagree and say that he met him in Genesis 14.
Right.
He already knew him by the time it's Genesis 18.
I agree with that.
So, and the reason I say that is because before Genesis 14, he's only hearing Yahuwah's voice, right? He hasn't seen him in a vision. He hasn't really met him face to face yet. But this Melchizedek guy comes to him in Genesis 14 after him defeating those kings and Amraphel, king of Shinar and all that. And he meets him literally face to face. So that's the first time it seems like in scripture that he met him face to face. And like I said before, for those that are just joining, Shalom, Sister Josie, Sister Alyssa, and Brother Moses. So just for those that just are joining, the whole opinion, if you ever hear a Jewish person say Shem was Melchizedek, king of Salem, like I said, that's retconning. They're trying to retcon Yahusha as Melchizedek. That's the only reason Judaism believes that today, is that the Talmudic rabbis did not accept Yahusha as the Messiah, mind you, and they would not accept him as a pre-incarnate Melchizedek taking flesh. So they would not want to accept that. So they did that on purpose. It's mentioned in their Talmud about that their opinion is Shem, but there's no scriptural foundation for that. It's a Talmudic swayed rabbinical opinion. And so just want to mention that to people out there. And again, that's why I don't believe Jasher is scripture, because it mentions that in the book of Jasher. So clearly, if Jasher is saying something different from Paul, it can't be considered scripture. So again, I go with Paul, what he says in Hebrews 7, clearly describing Yahusha as Melchizedek, king of Salem. If you look at it in context, Hebrews 7, 1-3. That's my opinion on it. So anyway, so moving on. I think we got enough time for probably one more chapter today. I think we'll try to do Genesis 15. Oh, I also did want to mention, I know there's also another controversial topic from Genesis 14 is who, I'm pretty sure you've heard it before, who would be Amraphel, king of Shinar. So I'm going to give you guys the two views, decide for yourself. The one more popular modern view now is that Amraphel was different from Nimrod in that he would have been a king of Babylon after Nimrod, which I guess is possible, but this is just my conjecture, my opinion, very unlikely. And I'm going to give you guys a link to Bible Hub to show you how unrealistic it is, because from what that timeline shows, between Genesis 10 and 14, you only got about 16 years. It's very, very improbable that Nimrod dies in 16 years. Very, very improbable. Plus the fact Genesis 10 says he founded Shinar. So we already know Shinar is his kingdom. That's part of his kingdom. Okay. So for someone else to reign, especially the way the Septuagint says, it says in the reign of Amraphel, king of Shinar. If Amraphel's not Nimrod, then you have a problem with someone else reigning over his kingdom. To me, it's just very implausible, in my opinion. Anyone that's interested, I can share you guys opinions even from encyclopedia, the Jewish encyclopedia.com on the matter, how they agree with my conclusion that Amraphel is the same person as Nimrod in Genesis 14. So it would seem, if my theory is correct, that means Abraham killed Nimrod, pretty much. Because we just saw in Genesis 14 and says he killed him and the kings with him. So they're utterly, those 5 kings were all killed. So anyway, so if my theory is correct, then you have Abraham, who is a type of Yahusha, killing the original Antichrist originally, which is kind of interesting if that's the case. So that would be kind of interesting to find out one day if Amraphel was indeed Nimrod, but I find it interesting. So anyway, so we're going to go to Genesis 15 now. All right. So I'm going to try to put you guys in a good spot here. Yeah, sure, Mom. Go ahead and read Genesis 15.
And I'm in the Let's Stand.
Okay, no problem. You can read in either version. Doesn't matter.
Well, I'll stick to it since you can read there. I'll keep it more continuous. After these words, the word of Yahuwah came to Abram in a vision, saying, "Do not fear, Abram. I am shielding you. Your reward will be very abundant." Abram said, Master, and what would that translate as if he's speaking to you?
Okay, so
Master and
the word of Yahuwah came to Abraham in a vision, saying, "Do not fear, Abram, I am shielding you. Your reward will be very abundant." Abram said, Master and Yahuwah. So master, the Greek word there, master, is actually is a different Greek word for Yahuwah or kurios. So master there literally means master. So yeah, he's basically saying Master Yahuwah, you could say.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Master Yahuwah, what will you give me? I am departing childless, except for the son of Masek, my house servant, this Eliezer of Damascus. And Abram said, since you have not given to me offspring, my house servant will be my heir. And at once the voice of Yahuwah came to him, saying, this man will not be your heir. Rather, one who will come from you, he will be your heir. He led him outside and said to him, look up now to the heavens and count the stars, if you can count them. And he said, your offspring will be like this. And Abram trusted Yahuwah, and it was reckoned to him as righteousness. And he said to him, I am the Elohim who brought you out of the territory of Chaldeans to give you this land to inherit. He said, Master Yahuwah, how will I know that I will inherit it? He said to him, bring me a 3-year-old heifer, and a 3-year-old goat, and a 3-year-old ram, and a turtle dove, and a pigeon. And he brought him all these,
and divided them down the middle, and set them facing one another. But he did not divide the birds. Birds came down on the carcasses, the halves, and Abram sat down with them. About sunset, a trance fell on Abram, and look, a great dark fear fell upon him. And it was said to Abram, knowing you will know that your offspring will be born in a land not its own, and they will afflict it, and they will enslave them, and they will humble them for 400 years. I will judge the nation that they serve. After these things, they will come out here with much baggage. You will depart to your ancestors with peace after growing to a good old age. The fourth generation, they will be brought back here, for the sins of the Amorites have not yet become enough. When the sun approached the west, there was a flame, and look, a smoking oven and torches of fire that went through between their divided parts. Yahuwah established a covenant with Abram in that place, saying, I will give your offspring this land from the river of Egypt to the great Euphrates. The Kenites and the Kenizzites and the Calmanites and the Hittites and the Perizzites and the Rephaim and the Amorites and the Canaanites and the Uasians and the Gilgahites and the Jebusites.
All right. So this is the covenant. This is where we see the divided parts. This is basically the famous point where Yahuwah gives him this promise again, this covenant promise of the land to his seed. He's going to give him the land of Canaan. I find it interesting that there's a lot of expoundings of this in the Targums of what else could have happened at this event. In multiple Aramaic Targums of Genesis 15, they mention that Yahuwah could have gave, supposedly, according to their historical tradition, that Yahuwah gave him when he was asleep the same vision he gave Daniel. So he, when it says darkness fell upon him, it expounds in their commentary that it said darkness, which is Babel. It goes through like the whole kingdoms, whole four kingdoms, the four beasts, and says, Edom is the last one. Edom, Rome will be the last one. That these supposedly these four kingdoms are going to afflict your people, the seed that comes from you. So also I find it interesting. We kind of overlook where it says a bird came to intervene with the sacrifice, like a bird, dives upon, I forget if it's the pigeons or if it comes on the pigeons when they're being sacrificed. Let me see here. Where does it talk about the sacrifice here? Okay, here we go. Verse 10, he brought him all these and divided them down in the middle and set them facing one another, but he did not divide the birds. Birds came down on the carcasses and halves, and Abram sat down with them. And about sunset, a trance fell on Abram, and look, at a great dark fear fell upon him. Now, what's interesting, and don't get me wrong, I'm not calling this book scripture or not. I don't believe it's inspired at this point in time. Because of multiple reasons, but I don't want to go through a rabbit trail here. But I find it interesting that in the Apocalypse of Abraham, it expounds on that verse 10. And it gives a story that the birds were actually, quote unquote, as we see in Revelations, 18, unclean birds. So in that book, it allegorizes the birds that come down on these sacrifices. It actually describes them as unclean birds. And it says that supposedly Satan came down as an unclean bird, like he the form of an unclean bird. So when you see in Revelations where it talks about Babylon's become a haunt for every unclean spirit and unclean bird, okay, so it doesn't mean it's talking about a literal bird. It can be actually talking about demons or fallen angels. as unclean birds. So I just wanted to expound on that because it's important to have correct exegetical interpretation, because a lot of times we just look at the English birds came down on the sacrifice and we're just thinking, oh, a crow came down or something. No, it would expound in that book that Satan tried to intervene and tried to discourage Abraham, is that historical tradition, which possibly could be true, because you see a lot of the time Satan would do that. He would try to intervene sometimes. So just thought I would mention that. Let's see here. So I personally believe that's the correct interpretation when you see the unclean birds being spoken sometimes, especially in Revelations. I doubt it's just talking about a crow, like a haunt for a crow. I seriously doubt it's talking about Babylon as a habitation for just a regular physical unclean bird. When you look at the context of Revelations, I forget if it's 18, but yeah. So anyway, you know what? I think we'll do 16 as well, just because it's very short. I'll pick up with Genesis 16 here. Let me just see. It's a different color here. Yeah, only because it's like literally 15 verses. I mean, this is a very short chapter, so we're actually ahead of schedule at this point. I think we'll stop at after this. I don't want to give people more than 5 or 6 chapters per session. I don't want to overwhelm you guys. So, all right. So here we go. Sarai and Hagar and Ishmael. So this is all going to deal with the what's going on between the situation of Hagar. Mom, if you need to, put the eco on if you need to.
Oh, I don't need it. Do you want it on?
Oh no, I'm fine.
Oh, I'm okay.
Sarai, the wife of Abram, had not borne children for him. She had an Egyptian maid whose name was Hagar. Sarai said to Abram, "Look, and Yahuwah has prevented me from bearing children. Go in therefore to my maid so that you may have children from her." Now notice, Abraham is not bringing up this idea. He is not suggesting it. Listen, ladies, this is her. This is all her here, okay? He is not recommending it. Abram listened to her voice. And Sarai, the wife of Abram, took Hagar, the Egyptian, her maid, after Abram had dwelt 10 years in the land of Canaan. So she gave her to Abram, her husband, as a wife for him. And he went in to Hagar, and she conceived, and she saw that she was pregnant, and her mistress was dishonored before her. So what this looks like is it's more or less, I think she was either becoming jealous, or Sarah was actually, there could be an actual, in a way, mocking from the other side. There could be actually.
You never know.
Because it's kind of weird how Ishmael is actually the one in the wrong later on with her son. So I kind of wonder if there's something going on with Hagar, where Hagar was boasting or being proudful and, prideful and all that. So you never know. It's translated very weirdly here. It says her mistress was dishonored before her. And Sarah said to Abram, "I am being wronged by you. I have given my maid unto your bosom." But when she saw that she was pregnant, I was dishonored before her. See, this is why I think the Masoretic switches flips the script, makes Sarah look out to be the crazy one, when Hagar could have been the one poking at her, being like, see, you needed me. Yeah, and you never know, because you see there's a problem with Ishmael and Isaac, and Ishmael sporting with Isaac, not Isaac sporting with Ishmael. So I'm just saying there could be something to that, that the Septuagint is trying to show us here. So she was pregnant and was dishonored before her. So meaning Sarah was dishonored before Hagar is the context there. So, all right, let me just try to fix my highlighter here. May Elohim judge between me and you. And Abram said to Sarai, look, your maid is before you. You may use her, however, it is pleasing to you. I think this is key to understand, especially for mishpakas out there that want to practice this type of marriage. Just keep in mind that the handmaid or mistress is actually under the wife's authority, not the husband.
Yeah.
So key phrase there: do to her as you will, meaning I have no power in this situation. She's your handmaid. Yeah, I know we're gonna need to put that on, Mom. Don't. If it's starting to get hot, don't worry. You may use her, however, is pleasing to you. And Sarai mistreated her, and she fled from her presence. And the messenger of Yahuwah Elohim found her at the spring of the water in the wilderness, at the spring on the way to Shur. And the messenger of Yahuwah said to her, Hagar, maid of Sarai, where are you encamping from? And where are you going? And she said, I am escaping from the presence of Sarai, my mistress. And the angel of Yahuwah said to her, return to your mistress and humble yourself under her hands. And the angel of Yahuwah said to her, increasing, I will increase your offspring. It will not be counted. It will not be countable because of the great number. So Yahuwah does give a baraka to Ishmael's seed. Even his seed will be innumerable, it seems. And the messenger of Yahuwah said to her, look, you are pregnant, you will bear a son, and call his name Ishmael, because Yahuwah has noticed your humiliation. He will be a rustic person. His hands will be against all, and the hands of all will be against him, and he will dwell in opposition to all his brothers. And Hagar called the name of Yahuwah, who is speaking to her, you are the Elohim who watches over me. Because she said, because I even saw in person the one who appeared to me on this account, she called the well where I saw in person. Look, it is between Kadesh and Bered. And Hagar brought forth a son for Abram. Abram called the name of his son whom Hagar brought forth for him Ishmael. Abram was 86 years old when Hagar bore Ishmael to Abram. So I think that's going to be the end of today's readings. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. What I do want to touch on before we end today's study, notice how she's calling the messenger of Yahuwah in context. Okay, so this is not a regular angel. So I want to make that distinct because a lot of people misunderstand that. So I want to show you guys something here. I'm going to show you guys. I really don't like how that's translated in the Lexham. I don't know. They sometimes take liberties with Greek words like saw in person. That Greek word means much more than saw in person. I'm going to show you what I mean. The Brentons actually does a better job. So it says here, yeah. And notice how the compound name of Yahuwah Elohim is there, not just Yahuwah. It says, she called the name of Yahuwah Elohim who spoke to her, you are the Elohim who sees me. For she said, I have openly seen him that appeared to me. So remember how scripture says no one has seen the Father in the book of John. No one's seen the Father, but the only begotten of the Father has seen him and knows him. Okay, so this clearly is referencing Yahusha as the messenger of Yahuwah in Genesis 16, verse 14. Now, funny to note, if you look at Genesis 16, 14, and I think I have the Targum Onkelos here. Let me check. Yeah. Okay, so it says, and she prayed in the name of Yahuwah who had spoken to her. This is Hagar that is talking about here. And she said, "You are Alua, all seeing. For she said, I have begun to see after that he has been revealed to me." Okay, so, and again, this is talking about Yahusha being the messenger of Yahuwah, and that he's the Alua who sees everything. Okay, obviously, all knowing, all seeing is Yahuwah, obviously. Okay, so, and I think in some targums it would say the word of Yahuwah when it's mentioning in verse 9 and 10. I would have to look at that later, but I think the Targum of Pseudo Jonathan actually has the word of Yahuwah for messenger of Yahuwah. So anyway, so that's the last thing I want to mention. This is going to be the end of our Genesis reading for today. So please stay tuned, everyone. We will be doing Genesis 17 to 21 next week. So Shabbat Shalom to all of our brothers and sisters watching on YouTube. And have a great rest of your Sabbath. Shalom. Hold on a second. Get off of this live here.